For 99% of people, that their season's over now.
Yeah.
How do I, after the opens, because some people didn't even get to quarterfinals, a lot of people aren't making it to semifinals, how do I view my season? What's a success, and is it determined by that? But they're going to be bummed. So what are you saying to them to get them out of that?
Everyone knows. Like,
so how do I know if that's my endurance or my strength? How would someone approach the offseason? Is there a good question to ask somebody that how they answer it can reveal whether they should pause the competing or not?
And you just assume, like, I need to work on my endurance because workout number 2
Do you think they
really
do that because that's the thing they like working on?
Yes.
But that goes back to the difference of, are you really trying to be a competitor or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Totally.
Maybe that's your question.
Yeah.
If you look at the stuff you don't want to do and you're...
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
For strength, what changes about my workouts this time of year, in the off season? If I cut out the Metcons, I cut out all that extra conditioning, and I'm only focusing on strength, what have you seen? Maybe I have some of the skills, but not all of them, or maybe I can do a little of each skill, but not very well. What are they doing? All right, Brandon, how you doing?
Hey, Chris, I'm doing well.
I forgot to turn on my camera a second ago, so this is round 2. I'm a little sick, as you could tell, maybe. We got quarterfinals still going on.
Wrapping up today.
Yep, last day out there, so we got some people doing some redos. We're going to talk here today about what we thought, reactions to what you thought about quarterfinals. Specifically, I want to know, what did you think about how I should feel as an athlete given the open test and quarterfinal test? Specifically, if I didn't, crush them,
Yeah, man, it's such
But
a
also,
tough...
I want to talk about, I also want to...
Thanks for cutting me off.
Sorry. I just want to set the table real quick. I also want to talk about, what do we do after that?
Yeah.
What should I be doing?
That's probably a better question. That's where people should be in the sport.
For 99% of people, that their season's over now.
Yeah. I think as far as the tests go, I think it's so hard as an athlete to look at it objectively because each year there's going to be a test or two that you probably don't do as well on, and then each year there's probably a couple that you do really well on, or maybe you get lucky in one year. Like, everything's in your wheelhouse.
Luck is a big part of it.
It is, and that's kind of my point. Is like, it depends on the test based on what's tested, what strengths are tested, what weaknesses are tested for that athlete on how they feel. And so most people go into it and they get really frustrated with a test and they're like, oh, I'm not fit enough, but it's just something that they're not good at. This year in particular has been so different because they have been really simple. We saw workout 1.
What do you mean by simple?
Simple as in lower barrier to entry. There wasn't something that was super complex to start workouts. Like last year, handstand walks started a workout, which really bottlenecked a lot of people. And it also helped a lot of people, those that maybe were really good on their hands. Or they had heavier barbells right away, a 275-pound barbell that you had to clean right away in a workout, as opposed to the heaviest barbell this year for males being 245. And then simple as in wall balls and burpees.
But what does that do? So you make them simple, and then what?
I've always said this, that to give background for those that haven't listened to any of our stuff, I do a lot of training, but it's not CrossFit training. Like, I'm still very fit.
And I would say you don't even do a lot of training.
Yeah, not a lot of training.
You're a dad of 3, and you get it in when you can.
Sure, but let's say I'm doing some hard cyclical work. I still do heavy squats, but it's just not CrossFit, right? It's to keep me healthy. I want to play with my kids, and I still want to go out there and be able to do stuff when I want to hang out with the guys, right? However, looking at these tests, I did workout 1, I do workout 2. I have better scores than some games athletes on those workouts. Even though I don't do the sport of CrossFit, and that tells me, and
you're running on fumes and barely training.
Yeah, and that's not I'm not trying to be egotistical.
No, I'm not taking it as a brand.
Yeah. I think
you're making a point.
Some people that don't know me say that, but my point being that just because I'm aerobically fit, I could do well at those tests, and then that puts me ahead of guys or girls.
A bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing in that the sport has biased itself to all the complex movements for a long time, or the heavier barbells, and all of a sudden they just shifted it on its head to where now it's super simple. So you got a bunch of guys like me, or girls, that are also similar to really aerobic monsters that can do all the simple stuff, but maybe aren't good with the heavier barbells and those things, that crushed test 1 and 2, and maybe even they crushed test 3 and 4 because the barbell wasn't heavy enough. And what happens is those maybe that focused over the last couple of years, which I know plenty of athletes in our programs, or athletes that maybe are in other programs that I talk to and am friendly with, that have really worked on their strength, or they've really worked on I need to get the strict handstand push-ups and the muscle ups, and that's all they did. But then workout 2 comes out with 150 burpee box jump overs, and they were really disappointed. Yeah. The reality is we just haven't seen that in quarterfinals. Usually it's 5-3-1 or 9-7-5 burpee box jump with a heavy barbell.
But wouldn't CrossFit say that we're testing over the duration of the season for the fittest, and so maybe we're getting there?
Yeah.
So it's simple now. So what would your argument be to that?
Well, that is what they've said in the past. Like Castro always says that we are going to have these stages where then if you look back at the entire season, it's a well-rounded test of fitness. My argument back to that, and I agree, I think they usually do a good job of that, by the way. Yeah. My argument back, though, is that it selects people that maybe aren't as good at the next stage.
Yeah.
And then I don't want
to see Brandon at the next stage.
Exactly. And you and I talked about this off camera. I was like, dude, I can crush these tests, but if I went to semifinals, I would get so exposed. Like I could not do 3 workouts in a day. I can't lift the heavier barbells, like a 315-pound clean. Like I don't even know if I could do it right now. So I'd go to semifinals, and I'd have these really good scores in quarterfinals or really good scores in the open. Everybody would be like, that dude's fit. And then I'd get dead last in a semifinal. So it shouldn't select just for a certain type of athlete. And I think these tests probably bias themselves a little too much toward the maybe weaker aerobic style athlete.
Okay, so that brings me back to my point, or the original question. How do I, after the opens, because some people didn't even get to quarterfinals, maybe they were close, and then some people obviously aren't, a lot of people aren't making it to semifinals. How do I view my season?
Yeah.
What's a success, and is it determined by that?
I still think that if you are interested in playing the game in the sport of CrossFit, so if you plan on doing the Open and quarterfinals next year, you need to take the tests into account because they may shift the biases from heavier barbells, heavier, like last year, for example, just go back. They had a 275-pound clean and 185-pound clean for women, which is much heavier than this year. They had a heavy thruster max, which they didn't have a max this year. They had 70-pound dumbbells and 50-pound dumbbells, which are heavier than normal. They had handstand walks at the beginning of a workout. So all these complex movements. And so everyone was thinking, I need to work on the high complexity, heavy barbell work. And people have gotten a lot better at that because over the last 4 or 5 years, that's been the shift in the sport. And so as that has shifted, coaches have started to shift the way that we train, and we think about it more as it doesn't matter as much if you can do 150 burpee box jump overs fast. It matters more that can you do 20 burpee box jump overs fast with a heavy barbell. And so now that as things shift, you got to think for the coaches, like we already have sat down and said, okay, what do we need to work on? How do we make the program as well-rounded as possible to make sure that people are getting better on both ends of the spectrum? But what happens, my question to you or the audience would be, what happens if it completely shifts back next year to where it's all heavy barbells again or high complex gymnastics?
Okay, but that's the thing. It's like if I'm one of these athletes who I know the game I'm playing and I've made peace with that, like, hey, that they can change this and that's part of it, right? This is what I signed up for, actually. It's the chaos.
And by the way, I love it. I think the tests are great. We're not hating on the tests.
But then how do I come to terms, there's some level of frustration that has to, what do you say to those people who did get burnt even though they may have had a great season?
My question to that person is, did you get burnt by the test or did you just not improve at all? Right? So if you have spent an entire year working on certain things that didn't come out in the test this year, it is what it is, right? You hedge your bets every single year, and I talk to athletes that they worked all year to drive their 1RM up, maybe in their snatch.
But they're going to be bummed. So what are you saying to them to get them out of that?
Yeah, I think that, listen,
there's going to be very few people who are like, yeah, well, I improved here, and here, so I'm still happy. They're probably like, this fucking sucks.
I guess the word would just be perspective, right? Yeah. Like you have to have some perspective and be as objective as you can about, like, I improved in the things. You smashed in the can. Please put that on the clip. I improved on the things that I worked on as an athlete. And if you improved on those things, then that's the first step in, like, just celebrating the victories that you had. Now, if you went the entire year and you worked on your ring muscle ups and didn't get any, then maybe you should look at a different program. Like, that's just kind of how it works. And that's not talking about any specific program, but just in general.
Or dial in.
Yeah. You figure out how
doing a good program, but you slacked.
Yeah, that's true. But for most people, I think that this is the time of year to be as objective as possible, have some perspective on the things that you worked on. And if you need to still get better at certain areas, this is the time to do a full review, do an analysis of the Open, if you did quarterfinals of quarterfinals, and then figure out what your limiters are so that you can take that time in the offseason to work on those. Because even if the testing body changes next year, still all the kind of same, there are kind of a couple buckets that people can work on. I think the big one is strength, which didn't come out as much this year, but that's still where most people are lacking. And then you have the bucket of, like, skills, like can you do the handstand walk? Can you do the ring muscle ups, so on and so forth? And then there's endurance, which is more now like CrossFit endurance, right? Can you do the 150 burpee box jump overs, or can you go really hard? Do you think people
know which one they need, or is it like probably like a mental headache being like, I think I need this, but I also might need that? Like, how do people feel usually?
Those that are a little bit more well-rounded, I think it's harder to find that out, right? Because maybe you're like, oh, I'm kind of on the bubble with my strength, but I also feel like I can't breathe in workouts, or the burpees really crush me, but I also need to get better at the heavy clean and jerks at the end of, workout 4. And some people need both of those things. And so that's when you just need a well-rounded program, which is, what most programs will offer.
So you, with a coaching eye, you're probably pretty good at looking at the athletes and helping them figure out what they need. When you're talking about yourself personally, or when someone is talking about their selves personally, do you feel like they do a good job of being honest with what they need?
I think that's
most
hard.
People hit the mark, or they you end up talking to them, you're like, ooh, you think you need that, and actually you're over here.
Well, in CrossFit, most people just think that they need more endurance, which is probably true for everyone, but that's not necessarily the limiting factor, right? Like the next step may be you need to get stronger first so you can express that strength. And then once you have the strength, you can build the endurance up.
Whereas, is that just because we're always going to be breathing hard, or usually these things?
Every test you feel like you're breathing hard. Like even in a strength test, the barbell cycling in event 4 in quarterfinals, everyone knows. Like
so how do I know if that's my endurance or my strength?
Well, if you can't lift the barbell, then clearly you have a strength deficit. If you're someone that is
that's obvious when it's like I can't hit that weight. But what if I'm getting through it and then?
Yeah, then I think that's the time that you talk to a coach and you run an analysis. And this is what we do. People come into, let's say, our program, TDD Compete. We message them directly, and then they're able to give us their numbers, and then I give them feedback on like, hey, what's your one arm snatch? What's your clean and jerk? What'd you hit in these certain tests? And then I can guide them into, okay, you need to do our strength bias path, or no, you need to be doing our skills path, or you just do our well-rounded program, which is maybe a little bit of both.
And so or did you say there was a main bucket that people fell in?
Yeah, I think that I didn't even finish the buckets because we were just chatting, but strength is the big one. And that's over the last 5 years, and everyone that's followed the sport for the last 5 years has seen the shift over. It was kind of like more like middle of the ground, moderate loads in most testing bodies. And now over the last couple of years, we've had to lift heavier, we've had to deadlift heavier, we've had to clean heavier, the 1RMs have gone up. So most people have needed to get stronger. This is the first year that we haven't seen like true strength tests in quarterfinals or in the open. So obviously that shifts things, but strength is still probably the biggest limiter for most people. The next one is skills, and we already talked about that, but just like think about all the basic CrossFit gymnastic skills, or being able to balance on your hands.
Or
those
not
things.
So basic.
Yeah, not so basic. That's true. And then the next one is the endurance piece, which is not just like people, I think they think endurance and they're like, can I run a 5K fast? In CrossFit, it's more like, can you do 50 strict handstand push-ups in a workout without your shoulders blowing up into burpee box jump overs, into a hard row sprint at the end? Like CrossFit endurance is what we're thinking about. And then there really is a fourth bucket. It is for the athlete, which is what you asked. Like, what if someone is like pretty well-rounded, but they feel like they need to still raise all the dials up? Like you're just under where you need to be with your strength, and you're just under where you need to be with your skills. Like you can do some muscle ups, but you can't do 20 at the end of a workout. And then you're just under on like the endurance. Like your burpee box jump overs felt good for 2 rounds, but then your 3rd round you blew up. Those people just, again, need a well-rounded program, which would be like one of our basic training paths in TTD Compete.
So how would someone approach the off season? So like we said, 99.9% of people are just done now. What are they doing?
Yeah, I think that this time, like I said a few minutes ago, is time for reflection. Like this week, when we're putting this video out, I assume it's going to be right after quarterfinals. Quarterfinals has ended. For those that just finished, look at your scores, compare them to your peers, and then compare them to your goals. I always say, like, this is your current reality. So figure out what your current reality is, and then set your goals for the next season, and then have this big vision of how to get to those goals. So the first step is like, what is my current reality? Okay, I did really well, let's just say on test number 1 and test number 2, but I didn't do so well on test 3 and 4 in quarterfinals. Test 3 and 4 were the gymnastics and the heavier barbell. Okay, I need to either work on my skills or work on my strength. Or the opposite may be true, that we saw a lot of athletes that did really well in the barbell and gymnastics, but they sucked at test number 2 because their burpee endurance is pretty bad.
That workout, dude.
It was brutal.
You couldn't pay me to do that.
It was actually fun to watch people suffer through it. That like, I mean, I was impressed at how fast people went on site.
Oh my gosh, did you see Lisa out there?
Hammering it.
Flying.
Yeah, it was awesome. But like, let's just say that was a weakness for you, or test 1 and 2 are weaknesses. Maybe that means you just need more true CrossFit endurance in the off season. And again, like if you lean on us, if you came into our program, then we're helping you out, figure out which path to go into. And then you sort yourself into a training path that allows you to work on those limitations.
How quickly am I doing this though? Like if I'm your athlete, right? Are you having me do all this reflecting now, or am I chilling for a little bit? What am I doing?
Yeah, I think that the advice there is probably going to be different from like coach to coach or athlete to athlete. I think people should do it right away.
Why?
And I know it stings that way because I want it to sting. Like I want you to be fresh in your mind, the things that you're frustrated about, the things that you did really well on, and you can write and journal out all those things right away, as opposed to letting it kind of sit for a couple of weeks and then you kind of. I think you just have this revisionist history within a couple of weeks of how things actually went. Ooh. As opposed to like how it feels now. Yeah. And again, some people say, no, you need to let it ruminate and then come back to it. But it's just like or
maybe you could do both.
Yeah, you could.
Maybe you be a little unrealistic at first and then you be a little kinder later.
I just think the data doesn't lie, right? Like if you look on the leaderboard and you see that you average, let's just say someone that's really good. Like they were 240th in this workout, 250th in this workout, but then like 8,000th in this workout. Well, okay, what was that workout that you were bad at and why? And then journal that out. Like what happened in that workout? Was it poor pacing? Obviously with being that big of a gap, it can't just be poor pacing. There has to be some kind of capacity issue there. Why is that? What did you work on the off season? Did you not get better at that certain test, or did you just not work on it? And if you didn't work on it, cool. That's probably a good situation because that means now you can and see how much better you can get at it.
I feel like there's a fifth bucket.
Okay.
And there's people who did all this. They did the Open. They either missed or made quarterfinals, or they just finished quarterfinals, and they kind of feel like, maybe I don't want to take this as serious anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's me and you, right? Like we love CrossFit and we still do it. Like you and I train together quite a bit, but
we're just training.
But we're like the bros that want to go out there. Right. Yeah, there are those people. And I think
do you get a sense out there that the people are hungry to compete still? Like what's it?
I think that there's still a huge group of people that are hungry to compete, and I love it. And I love working with those people. Like one of the things that I enjoy about TD Compete, especially, is we have so many people in there that are hungry to make semifinals or to do well in their next competition.
Yeah, everybody in that program are like, this is what I want to do.
And it really is awesome, and I love it because it makes me better as a coach to like really try to get myself to dial in how we program to get those people better. But there are also plenty of people that reach out and they're like, hey, look, I love CrossFit. I love the methodology. But at this point in my life, this is me speaking here. I've got 3 kids, a full-time job. I want to stay fit. I want to look good. I want to stay healthy, but I don't want to go in the gym and just do ring muscle up progressions. And
right. Well, for me, it's like I'm pretty busy and I don't care enough to spend the time on that. Like there's other things I'd rather do, work being one of them. And so, but I still want to go in and whatever. So if I did all that and found out that, what are you telling that person? Yeah. How do you make that transition?
For sure. And I think we've made this pretty easy. We have a fitness track in our online program that allows you to do a 60-minute program that's basically like, it's called TDD 60. And
I know the program, but what's in it?
Oh, I was like, how do you not know the program? Basically, you just have some very...
That's for this person?
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing
it? We have done it. We've done a lot of the training.
You pulled those workouts?
Yeah, that's what we do.
I just didn't know it.
Yeah, just sucker Chris into doing the 60 program. Basic strength progressions. So you're still following some things to get a little bit stronger, but it's not like really hard strength progressions. You're not doing like a small off cycle for squats or something like that where you're getting sore every week. And then fun CrossFit or fun conditioning. So kind of a lower barrier to entry, more like what we saw in quarterfinals this year with test 1 and 2. That will keep you really fit. I think it'll keep you feeling good and looking good, and that's what a lot of people want.
Okay, but how do you keep that person honest? If I found out, like, so I'm not just being, riding my emotions, feeling like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. But is there a good question to ask somebody that how they answer it can reveal whether they should pause the competing or not? Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, I get what you're asking. I don't know what that question would be, though. I think everyone knows deep down inside. Like if you go into the gym every day and you're dreading doing the progressions that are needed to let's just go back to the example, right?
Well, I think some people feel they have to do what competitors do, people who want to compete specifically to get in shape or look and feel good and be healthy.
Yeah, but if you want to compete, you need to be in a competitive program, like our program, TDD Compete. And if you're in that program, you need to, this time of year, dial it in and figure out what you need to work on. So again, like we have our strength bias path. If you need to get stronger, do that. We have our skills bias path. If you need to work on your skills, you do that. You got our endurance path. Do the endurance path if you need to get better at CrossFit. With that said, if you start walking in the gym this off season and you're like, I don't want to do the strength work because this is taking me, or I have to put too much focus into all the accessory pieces and it's not as fun. If that fire's not there, then there's probably a part of me that would tell that person, go and have some fun in like a TDD 60 path, or go do something fun in your class for a while to reignite that fire so that you can go back in the competitive program. But a lot of people just decide, I want to look and feel good. I don't want to compete anymore. And for that person, it probably is better that they follow maybe a fun CrossFit training program like TDD 60.
Yeah. All right, let me ask this in a different way. 99.9% of people are done.
Yeah.
How could they mess this time of year up?
Yeah.
You know I love that question.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Because I feel like that one clicks easier in my brain. You could tell me all the right things to do, but
yeah, how
you
can
tell
I mess
me
it up?
how I mess it up, and I hear that, and I'm like, dang, okay, yeah, I'm about to do that.
Yeah. Well, the biggest one is doing a little too much too soon. So especially if you just finished quarterfinals, make sure that you're taking some time this week to kind of decompress, deload. And if you're in one of our programs or you're an individual athlete, like that's what your coach is going to give you this week. When you start back up, it goes back to that running the analysis and figuring out what you need to work on. The thing that people mess up is they try to work on everything right away, and then they just don't get better at much, or they just assume that they need to get better at something without looking at the data. So again, like if we went back and you just assume like, I need to work on my endurance because workout number 2
Do you think
was
they
really
do
bad.
that because that's the thing they like working on?
Yes. And so that goes back to kind of the point of like, people need some help, or they need to look at the numbers, like have an objective view. Like, again,
but I don't want to look at the numbers and
Right.
realize that I got to actually put some work in.
Totally. Because if I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, I really like the endurance. I'm going to do the CrossFit stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's fun for me. But in reality, if I was training to be competitive right now, I would have to do strength
But that
work.
goes back to the difference of, are you really trying to be a competitor, or
Yes.
Yeah, okay, there
Yeah,
you go.
totally.
Maybe that's your question.
Yeah.
If you look at the stuff you don't want to do and you're
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the decision, I think, like, for example, going back to it, you and I both made. We realized that we have other things that are priorities for us. And so then we decided, like, we wanted to, just stay healthy and fit. If you want to be a competitor, though, and you are looking at the numbers and like, for example, you need to work on your strength.
Let's dive into strength.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
For strength, what changes about my workouts this time of year, in the off season, if I'm that guy?
If you're someone that legitimately needs to get stronger, then you should follow a strength bias program. So we have a strength bias program in TD to Compete. And the way that is different than, like, let's say just our normal RX training path is that the CrossFit conditioning, or a lot of the basic conditioning, is actually removed from that for the next training cycle, so that athletes can focus on actually developing high-end, high-powered strength.
Is that a struggle? Because I know you've been running the RX bias for a while now.
Sure.
Is it hard to get people to divorce
those that have
Metcons
been?
And the
For new people, it is, because every other program they've ever seen in the CrossFit space is it's normal, right? It's like you do your strength, maybe a little bit of accessory, CrossFit conditioning, mobility. Like, it's that's like this thing that you do.
You got to scratch the itch. Yeah.
Exactly.
But why are you taking it out?
Because there can be, for most people, an interference effect. So let's just say that you're doing a really good strength program and it's well written, perfectly written, but then right after that, you're doing hard CrossFit conditioning every day. There's going to be an impact from the conditioning that doesn't allow you to get as strong as you otherwise would.
But that's our sport. So why do I care about that now?
So if you say, I just need to get a little bit stronger, 5 pounds on my lifts, and that's it, you could do that and you'll probably get away with it. But for most people that come into the sport, I just talked to someone the other day that said, it's a male athlete, he's in his mid-20s and he wants to be competitive. His snatch right now is 185 pounds, which is actually pretty good. But the average semifinal snatch right now is 265 pounds. So he has this huge gap. What is that, 80 pounds that he needs to make up over the next couple of years? And so we had that conversation of like, hey, look, man, you're a really good athlete in the sport, but right now you should focus on building your strength as much as you can for the next couple of months, so that when he comes back and he talks to me in October, his snatch is 225 or 235. Now he's really closed the gap. Whereas if he just blends everything together, he probably will get stronger, but that 185 maybe only goes up to 195. So the question is like, how much better do you actually want to get on specific categories in the sport? And if strength is your limitation, get as good at that as you can now, and we'll blend everything back in when we get into the fall or like closer to the open season next year.
So it's not going away forever.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think if you tell people.
But why? Why wouldn't it just keep going on until I hit 265 or whatever
Some people do that. And not to just give like all these anecdotes, but we actually there's another guy in the program, Joe Mills, who, shout out Joe if he watches these, he did that for an entire year. He instead of doing,
he just did strength bias
he did strength bias all the way through. I helped him navigate that and basically say, hey, look, just redo the strength bias path during the open peaking cycle. And he didn't worry about the open. He didn't do it. And he's PR'd all of his lifts multiple times over and over again. And now he's going to train normal.
That sounds like a motherfricker who really taking it serious, and he's not going to come fall. And when the open's coming up, he doesn't get that itch, which it's going to happen, right?
Right, for sure.
If it's happening to me who doesn't even do CrossFit,
but for those people that they get the itch, it's just kind of like, hey, have discipline for a couple of months to get stronger, and then when you need to scratch that itch, we'll have that back.
Okay, so we're going to do strength bias for a couple months. What can I realistically expect? If I cut out the Metcons, I cut out all that extra conditioning, and I'm only focusing on strength, what have you seen? What can I expect?
So it is going to be different for every level of athlete, because some athletes that are like have a really low training age, they can PR much faster, right. They have huge gains, or those that maybe have a low biological age, they also just in general like can PR faster. However, based on what we've seen over the last 2 years running the program, anywhere from in an 8-week cycle, 10 to 20 pounds is like very normal for a lot of athletes. Over the 3 cycles that we run of it, you'll see 20 to 30 pound jumps, which is a huge jump in, just 18 to 24 weeks.
I think there's another element, and tell me if I'm making this up, but I feel it with myself, and granted I'm not doing CrossFit all the time. I feel like there's strength PRs, and then there's just being able to handle the same weight you can handle, but feeling good.
So that's exactly what test number 4 in quarterfinals was. It wasn't just about doing a PR, but it's like, can you cycle that barbell well? And for me, it's funny because if I don't touch a lot of strength work, like I get weaker on my top end stuff, but I feel like I can still kind of handle it. But then over time that disappears too. And so then you have no resiliency with strength. So yes, you're right on. Like if you want to get better at like the true strength endurance test, like test 4, where you're doing 10 clean and jerks reps a minute, 10 clean and jerks reps a minute, you not only need to get like your 1RMs up, but you also just need to be doing strength endurance work, which the strength bias path will do that for you.
Awesome. Anything else specific to the people who are going to fall in that strength bucket that's different this time of year, or is that pretty much it?
That's it. And I think the big thing too is that they're doing accessory pieces for the gymnastics. So it's not just like I'm only working on barbells. In our program,
so when gymnastic strength.
Yeah, when we think about strength, it's more of a well-rounded CrossFit strength. So you're doing all the barbell stuff, the Olympic lifting, the powerlifting, but then you're also working on all of the gymnastics work, the strict pulling, the strict pressing. Well,
that makes it strength gymnastics. Like what changes?
So if you think about a strict handstand push-up, a lot of people can, maybe strict press their body weight, but then they kick up and they can't control a strict handstand push-up, or they don't have the ability to do multiple strict handstand push-ups. In the program, we're teaching you hand balancing, straight arm strength. We're teaching you how to get into a tripod position.
Y'all doing some neck exercises?
Yeah, we need some of those, man. Seriously, if you're doing handstand
I got one of those
push-ups.
little bobble necks.
Bobble necks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're adding all of that in, so you're also improving on the gymnastics side, and not just like, oh, my 1RM press went up, but we also are improving your handstand push-ups at the same time.
Okay. So that's strength. Well, let's talk about skills. So if I'm the person who needs to, this one seems pretty obvious. It's like if I either have the skills or don't, but maybe I have some of the skills, but not all of them, or maybe I can do a little of each skill, but not very well. What are they doing?
Yeah. I think the best test to look at if you were like comparing scores would be test number 3, because
for quarterfinals.
Yeah. So test number 3, you had the handstand push-ups and then toe to bar, handstand push-ups and rope climb, handstand push-ups and ring muscle up. So you get kind of some
a little
touches.
FU medley, if you will, if you don't have the skills.
Exactly. And there's like an endurance limitation there too, as far as local muscular endurance, as everyone felt like your grip blows up in the rope climbs, going to the ring muscle ups, or pressing blows up because you're doing handstand push-ups every single round. So some of that plays a role, but like if you're someone that just, I can't do a rope climb, then clearly you're skill limited, or I can't do a ring muscle up, you're skill limited. That's an obvious one, which obviously you said. But for those that maybe like, hey, I got 1 ring muscle up in that workout, or the rope climbs took me 3.5 or 4 minutes, I would still say that's a skill limitation. If you're slower than your peers on a specific movement, a rope climb or handstand walk or toe to bar or chest to bar, whatever it may be, then those are things that you need to dial in the off season. And this is where it kind of gets a little sketchy for people, because they do a workout. Let's say, like, even if we went back to the open, where the last open workout was the thrusters and chest to bars, thrusters and bar muscle ups. And they're like, my heart rate was out of control and I couldn't do the workout. I need to work on endurance. But then if I watch their video, which I've done this a couple of times, it's like, dude, your chest to bars are so bad. You were holding your breath when you're doing the chest to bars, which then when you got back to the thrusters, spiked your heart rate and made you feel like your heart was out of control. That's not necessarily an endurance or an aerobic endurance limitation. That's let's get your chest to bars as efficient as possible now in the off season. So you're using less effort per rep on the gymnastics pieces. And then just like with the strength bias, when we come back to the fall, we'll tie it all back together.
So what's a good way to be honest about that if I don't have you watching my videos?
I think that if you go into a workout, and within the first couple of rounds, you feel like you're already having local muscle fatigue on specific movements, or you can't do the movement after a couple of rounds, there's a skill limitation there. And I know that's still kind of broad, but perfect example, again, going back to quarterfinal test 3, if your toe to bar were already blown up in the second round of that workout, that's a skill limitation that you need to work on. And toe to bar is a pretty simple skill to build, but you need to build that first instead of thinking about, I need to improve my, my VO2 max. Like your VO2 max isn't going to change anything about your toe to bar being bad or your chest bars being bad. So it's a really good way to think about building the basic technique in those skills in the off season. Like I want to learn the butterfly chest to bar. I want to learn how to do a kipping muscle up. I want to learn how to clamp my feet on the rope climb and do all those basic things, and then build that into CrossFit work later on in the season.
So this goes back into what we were saying earlier about, do I really want to compete? Because I know if I'm being honest about me, it's like I get these skills. I can do a bar muscle up. I could do a ring muscle up. I could do all these skills. I can do them, but not very well. And really, if I'm being honest, I can only do like 1 or 2, and then they all just fall apart, especially if you mix them in a workout with X, Y, and Z. But in my head, and here's the part I'm being honest about, it might be with other people, is like in my head, I feel like I've done the work to get it already. And now when you're telling me that now I got to focus on them again, I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to do that, dude.
Yeah, I'll be honest too. This is my least favorite thing. Like I actually much rather do strength work because at least I feel like you feel good after doing the strength work. Like you see a natural, like a quick response if you do some back squats.
Strength to me is fun.
Yeah.
This sounds like a nightmare.
The skill and the technique work is tough, but it pays off.
So what do you do to? I guess it's cut and dry. It's like, look, if you want to do this, is what you got to do, or is there some other thing you can say to get people excited about this?
I think I lack empathy, which is a problem for me. Sorry, I just spit all over you, Chris. Hopefully didn't make it all the way over there. I'm probably too harsh in that if you say you want to compete, you need to work on these skills, get better at them, and I promise you'll get better at them if you do it all year, right? I don't know how else to say that other than the proof is in the pudding. Every single year we see people in our program that work on those skills all year. They get their bar muscle ups, they get their ring muscle ups, they get their handstand walk.
That's a different breed of motherfricker right there.
But then they go into the open and they crush it. And then they can make it to quarterfinals and then they crush it again. It's like, that's real improvement. And I mean, listen, let me put it this way. We all do CrossFit because of the challenge, right? Everyone steps into the gym. The first time, my first workout was Fran. I'm sure your first workout was some crazy workout like that too.
I think it was Diane.
Diane. Okay. So
that's the one with the deadlifts and the.
Yeah. Yep. And you did it and you got crushed, right?
Super crushed.
And then what did you think? I want to do more of this. Yeah. Right. We love the challenge.
Listen to that. I know you're having marketing problems.
Right. We love the challenge of doing the sport. So then we sweat, we burpee, we run, we breathe hard because we want to be able to look ourselves in the face at the end of the day. And when our head was saying we can't, we know we absolutely can, right? That's why we did the sport. That's why we love the sport. That's why we still coach in the sport.
Yeah, but that was Diane and Fran, not skill work.
I think that concept, that perspective that I just gave is the same way that we have to face the skill work or any of these other limitations. Embrace the challenge and do all that work so that you can do it again.
I might just be the weak person because we got plenty of people I know in our intermediate path who doing the skill work and they crush.
Crushing it. Yes.
I just might be weak-minded.
Yeah.
What else changes about half an hour? So with strength, you said you took out the conditioning so that they could really focus on that. With skills, what's changing so that they could really dial that in?
To begin, when you start a new skill development, you want to take out some of the hard breathing in that portion of the training. Now, they're still doing our skill path. They're doing some legit conditioning still, so you'll still have plenty of fun stuff. But
they're still getting their fix.
They're still getting their fix. But instead of it being ring muscle ups in that conditioning portion, we pull the ring muscle ups out, and then you spend the first part of the day working on ring muscle up strength and technique. So you're isolating
what goes in place of the muscle ups.
So then let's say like Mia writes all our skill programs. She'll put in, if it was...
Because you said you took it out.
Yeah, let's just say like a perfect example of this would be 10 rounds for time. I'm going to say some crazy workout. 10 rounds for time, 200-meter run, 3 ring muscle ups, and 12 burpees. Nasty, okay? If that were a workout and then what she wanted to do is change it from the ring muscle ups, she would just pull those ring muscle ups out, insert another movement that's low barrier to entry, basically like a fast turnover, 10 rounds for time, 200-meter run, 8 kettlebell swings, 12 burpees.
Okay, well in this example with our program, how much time are they spending on the skills? So for people listening who aren't doing our program, what kind of time are they going to spend doing skill work before they go hit the
Right.
Metcon.
This time of year, you're going to spend quite a bit of time. So 30 to 40 minutes a day is going to be spent on developing the skills, and it rotates throughout the week. So you're still touching all of them. And in a 2-week period, you're going to get every single major skill that's been tested in the sport. So things from all the way from ring muscle ups to toe to bar to handstand walk and everything else you can think of. And then on top of that, we have 25 skill programs that people can add on. So I know you asked this earlier, and this is kind of like a pitch for the program, I guess. For those that maybe have all the skills, but they're lacking one. For me, let's say it's rope climbs. Like when I saw workout 3, I like all the other movements, but I haven't done a rope climb in like a year and a half. If I were to come back into competing, I would need rope climbs. I would add the rope climb skill program to my regular strength bias path, or maybe if I'm just doing RX, I would do that as a way to develop that basic skill.
Okay. And y'all help people figure that out, right? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the skill changes that way. The last bucket you had mentioned,
endurance.
We ended up having 5 buckets, but the main 3 was endurance, skill, strength.
Yeah.
What's changing for them?
The endurance option is kind of, you can think about endurance in a couple of ways. I kind of briefly mentioned this. You can think about it as like true, just like aerobic endurance, like building your endurance to be able to.
First off, how do I know I'm the endurance person? Back to our other points, like.
This is the athlete that crushed the barbell. If we go back to the quarterfinal test, you crushed workout 4, you probably crushed workout 3, but then the row really destroyed you in workout 1. 4 was the barbell. Okay. So like, let's just say that you're really strong. You have if you're Mike McGoldrick, you can clean almost 400 pounds. You can jerk 400 pounds. You can squat 500 pounds, whatever it is that he can do. But workout 2 crushed you because of the burpees. And workout 1, you couldn't maintain your row pace. You just blew up in that. And you feel like, I can't control my heart rate. I can't control my breathing. And in the open, workout 1 crushed you, the burpees and the dumbbell snatches. Maybe workout 2 because you couldn't keep your row pace in the 20-minute AMRAP. But everything else is fine. There's no skill limitation. There's no strength limitation. It's just like you feel like you can't breathe in workouts. And more people are going to fit into this bucket if training continues to be, or if the testing body in CrossFit continues to change where everything's low barrier to entry. More and more people are going to be strong enough. Like if 245 is the heaviest male barbell we see over the next couple of years, which I'm sure they're going to raise it, right? But let's just say that was the case. More people need to shift from strength to endurance work. If it keeps going up in strength, then you need to focus on strength, right? But all that to say, if that's you have all the strength, you have all the skills, but you feel like you can't breathe, your heart rate's out of control, then endurance is a good option. In the off season, there's kind of 2 ways that we do this. We have a cyclical endurance option. That's just for the athlete that wants to be able to build like their true aerobic base, right? Like they're not worried about the CrossFit endurance or the muscular endurance that's needed in the sport, but they want to just improve their.
They're not worried about it. Why? Because they've determined that they.
Like maybe they're good at that, but they feel like I just want to be able to breathe better, or I want to stay healthy and I'm not doing as much CrossFit. There's an aerobic endurance piece each day. For most people though, they probably got exposed. Like even if you did well on workouts 1 and 2, you always can do better. And especially as people get fitter and fitter, like we look at the top scores and they're just insane. Like people getting 260 plus reps on workout 1 in quarterfinals, that's absolutely insane. And so for those people that look at it and say, I need to get better, then one of our regular training paths fit them really well in the off season. What that looks like is you still get a strength progression every single day. We have some accessory work for those that need to work on their gymnastics. And then we have CrossFit conditioning every single day of the week. And this time of year is when we bias what we call muscular endurance. So if I'm looking at all of the different things that are tested in the sport, I kind of put them into buckets. There's like squat endurance. That's just the bending of the knees. So that includes lunges, step ups like we had in quarterfinals, wall balls, all the squat patterns, bilateral, unilateral. Then you have a hinging pattern, the hinging endurance, which is basically pulling anything off the ground. And that's as basic as a deadlift to a kettlebell swing to a power snatch to anything else where you're swinging it up and down or pulling it up and down. And then you have upper body pressing and upper body pulling, and that's just what it is, right? Strict handstand push-ups or handstand walks is pressing, pulling is chest to bars, ring muscle ups, so on and so forth.
Okay, endurance and all those things.
Yeah, those buckets, we want to build endurance and all those things. I know that kind of took it into the nitty-gritty, which you hate, but just so people understand that that's the way that we look at it. And if you're covering those buckets, you're covering basically everything that could be tested in the sport. Now, you still need to get skill-specific within those things. Like if you could be really good at, let's just say, squat endurance, but wall balls are hard for you because you're short and the target's tall, right? And so you need to work on that specifically. But if your squat endurance is good, it makes wall balls easier, right? So that athlete is working on those things in the offseason. And we already have built out progressions all the way through the offseason to work and target on those basically those 4 buckets. And there's obviously other things that go into that.
And so that would just be something that they add into their
It's already in there. So everything's built in. Yeah, this is the easiest one.
That's how we do it.
Yeah, totally. That's how we do it. So you come into the program, you follow our RX training path, and that's what you're getting. Right. And if you're someone that needs to work on their strength, then you would not do that, and you're following our strength bias path.
Well, obviously, we want people to follow our program, but if they're out there and they're in that bucket and they're not following our program, what's something that these people could, is it easy enough to say, or is that like a whole nother podcast? Yeah. Some advice for them.
I think the big advice is to dial in what do you mean by endurance? Like if you are the person that feels like my skill endurance, my muscular endurance is really good. For example, in workout 3, there was no grip limitation, no pulling limitation. The rope climbs were fine. The ring muscle ups were fine. You just genuinely felt like you could not breathe. Or in workout 2, there was no pressing limitation at all. You just genuinely felt like you couldn't breathe doing the burpee box jump overs. Then you probably just need like more true, like building your aerobic base, building your VO2 max, all those things. For most people, that's not the case, and the sport isn't an endurance sport. Like I know I'm gonna get a lot of blowback on it, but like the longest test usually is 20 minutes. You know, we're not doing a marathon. You don't have to keep like this threshold pace for an hour and a half. What really is the limiting factor for most people is their ability to express power at kind of the local level. So you think about box step-ups. People weren't saying it was just because of my heart. They were saying my grip was blowing up, I couldn't hold the dumbbells, or my legs were blowing up, and so I couldn't keep stepping on the box. So muscular endurance, in my opinion, is more important than just like the overarching, like what we call our engine or aerobic capacity in the sport. Do you need to improve both? Yes, absolutely. And we can do those at the same time, but people need to also work on muscular endurance first.
I get the feeling, and see if this little analogy might play out right. I get the feeling that a lot of people, and you may have said at the beginning, are going to just assume this is the one they need or it's the one they want. It's the easiest thing to just, if I'm doing my program, I could just attack, let's just add more cardio. Let's add more conditioning, right? And in that way, it's kind of like your protein, carb, fat. Mm-hmm. It's like everyone's like, when it gets to the time, like, oh, if I could eat a little more, let me get some of those carbs. Are these the carbs where we got to get people to watch out? Like, hey, you could add some more of these in there, but
I think that if the testing body stays the same, most people will benefit from that. So it's probably a little bit different.
So who should not? Who should stay away from these carbs? Yeah,
I mean, it's definitely the person that...
Who's about to overeat, Brandon? That's what I'm asking.
Good question.
Because I feel like everyone wants to add... Okay. When we go out there, no one's being like, oh, let me go add, X, Y, Z. It's always that. Right.
If you're weak, you need to do strength bias. Like that's just really what it comes down to. Like you need to get your strength, and then you can come in and do all the fun...
At the expense of doing this.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do the CrossFit stuff. Get your strength bias done, get stronger, and then you can do all the fun CrossFit stuff later on, like we talked about. Or if you do not have specific skills, like if you can't do a ring muscle up, or if you can't do a toe to bar, or you can't handstand walk, then you need to work on that now. This is like the perfect time. It's the off season. Most people are going to want to do qualifiers later on in the summertime or sometime in the fall when like Wadapalooza and all those come out. Get those skills so that you can do whatever competition you want to do in the fall. Like I think that this is just a great time to make sure that you're actually working on your weaknesses.
On that note, when you could just speak about our program, when does it get back to, we're not really in off season anymore, and now we're gearing back up and everything's coming back together?
Yeah, we start that mid-October.
Mid-October. So we got a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's like 4.5 months of like true, let's get down to training and let's get better at those things. I know I keep saying this, so I'll reiterate it because I think it's important. Like, why not work on the things that you're bad at so the next year you can come in and really be proud about your effort? You know what I mean? Like your performance is dictated based on what you do in the off season. So if you just keep doing the things that you're good at or the things that you really enjoy, that's fine. But like we said, if you want to be a competitor, you need to make sure that you're working on your weaknesses so that you can come in next year and you improve on the leaderboard.
All right. Well, anything else to round out, like how people, back to the original question, like, okay, I just finished my season. One more time, like, how do I view it?
Yeah, I mean, I just would encourage people also to take some time and have some fun. Like that's what we'll do in our like we'll have Murph progressions because we want to do that as a community. We're gonna have our fun ruck progressions later on
this year.
Heck yeah, we are.
Did you write down your time from last year?
No, didn't we record it? I thought you maybe took some pictures or something.
We got to beat.
Yeah,
that.
We need to. We'll film some.
Kyle said he didn't want to do it at your house because he doesn't like your neighborhood.
It's very
Why
hilly.
Is that? Oh,
because you know how you go down and then you have to come back up. Yeah.
What else to expect?
It's hilly here though too.
You were saying Murph progressions?
Yeah, Murph progressions. We have our ruck progressions. We have our summer sizzler, which is a fun competition.
These are things not right now, but coming up on the horizon.
And we do all that because we want to, for me, I love the community. And one of like the greatest joys that I have is seeing people PR and get better at the sport, but also like the interactions that we have on a daily basis in our water cooler, which is basically like just our online forum in the app, and then messaging people back and forth, seeing how they're doing, what we can do to help. And so we want to build a tight-knit community through fitness. And a fun way to do that is with those kind of things, the Summer Sizzler, Murph, and Ruck, and all those other fun things that we'll do.
What time of year was Chad? That wasn't too long.
November. Yeah. And
okay.
we'll do Chad again in November. We'll have our Winners Coming Classic in December. We're going to have some fun challenges, some of the goofy stuff we did last year, like the backward handstand walk race and the arms-only echo bike. We'll have some of those coming out soon, too.
Arm-only echo bike.
It was way harder. For those that were in the program, everyone thought it was going to be easy, but within like 10 seconds, your arms blow up. It was Max Cal. Did you do it?
No, I saw y'all do it.
Yeah, Max Cal's on the echo.
Who won?
It was fun. I did, which was shocking because I did not think I was going to.
All right. Well, let's put a bow on this. Let's put a wrap on this. We do have, I filmed some of Alexis's full workouts for quarterfinals, and I think me and her are going to sit down and go over those. So
that'll be fun.
Expect to see those on YouTube soon. Anything else? When does the off-season training for our program start?
Yeah, we'll start back on April 29th, which, depending on when you put this out, is less than a week away.
Okay.
And then things kind of ramp up over 3 weeks. And then May 20th, we start some like legit training.
Sorry.
Wow.
I just had a thought. At the same time, I had to cough. But you said April 29th, and that reminded me, in TTT affiliate, they have a test that me, you, and Mike tested called Arcade or something like that.
Arcade.
He named it Arcade. That workout was no joke. Tell them what it is.
So it's 30 seconds of 5 different movements, and you rest 30 seconds between them. And then you go directly into a next round, which is 60 seconds of each of the movements, resting 30 seconds between, directly into another round of 90 seconds.
That's a terrible way to do this.
But here's my question. At what point did it get hard for you? Was it hard on the 30 on, 30 off?
I think it started in the minute one.
Yeah. I was going to say 30 on, 30 off was nothing.
Yeah, that was nothing.
60 was still okay, but toward the end it was hard. The 90 seconds were tough.
Yeah, it was rough.
Which was the hardest movement? The box jumps were
Did you
terrible.
set all the movements? Sorry,
I didn't set the movements. So it was goblet squat, dumbbell snatch, burpee
over row,
burpee over rower, box jump over, row cows.
Yeah. I don't know, dude. The first 3 is just like a back ruiner. You got the goblet squat into the snatches into the burpee. That's a lot of back stuff.
Yeah. It's so funny what we're like opposite on that, because those 3 were fine, and then the box jump overs were terrible. Like, I just hated doing the box.
It was
jump
just
overs.
Back fatigue for me.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was definitely.
But anyway, that workout's coming up for affiliate, so they'll be launching all their new cycle stuff too. So go check that out.
Yeah. We'll do a fun variation of that in 62.
We'll post a clip on Instagram, I think, of us doing it. Frank walked out and filmed us all dying. So anything else?
I think that's it. Some fun podcasts coming up.
Throwdown will be coming back at some point. Podcast.
Partner Throwdown.
Partner Throwdown. Yep, that's right. On Thursday. I feel like we're missing something else. I guess you'll just have to subscribe and stay tuned. All right. Peace.